Archie's TV Lab Out Issue 94. Della decides to leave on her broom to check up on Sabrina because she's been getting a lot of reports about her doing good deeds. Why wouldn't she simply warp to her house? That'd be faster. I'm guessing this will be another story where Sabrina ends up doing bad deeds by accident and impressing her. She turns herself into a little boy to test her meanness in an unfair way and creates a sled for herself. The boy she turned into cries because there's no snow to sled on. Sabrina uses magic to send him to where there's plenty of snow, so she sends Della to a polar bear. You'd think she'd just summon some snow right here. That has to be what Della expected. It's awesomely competent of Della to freeze the polar bear in an ice cube after instantly returning to normal. Sure, it's animal abuse when she could have just warped away, but it's cool to see that she can defend herself as a head witch should be able to. She turns herself into a little girl and cries near Sabrina, wishing that she had a toy. At this point, it's obvious what the plot will be like, but I'm interested in seeing how Sabrina's gonna screw up. Sabrina asks the spirit world to give her a bike, but her feet can't reach the pedals. Somehow, Sabrina can't hear her say this, and just thinks that it feels good to make kids happy. Then Della crashes into a lamppost. Why is Della testing Sabrina by herself? That's such a bad idea. Also, if she really wanted to test how good she was, if Sabrina was especially good, she would help someone who annoyed her a lot after being made to feel sorry for her. Like someone who's trying to steal Harvey from her. She becomes an old lady and says she feels alone while sitting on the park bench. Uncharacteristically, Sabrina doesn't sit down and talk to her and instead warps her to a place where there would be a lot of people. It's hard to believe she'd warp someone away, because they'd obviously just be freaked out at it. Sabrina sends Della into a terrible subway, and at first she can't get her magic hand loose to get out of the situation. She ends up falling over, and hands Hilda a gift basket to reward Sabrina for her misbehavior. It's only smart of her to reward people to get them to keep doing what she wants them to do, even if rewarding people by itself sounds like a good deed. Hilda actually says that she's never thought of Della as a type to reward an apprentice witch before. Sabrina thinks that here's a chance to do another good deed. She takes the gift basket to the city orphanage without seeing what the gifts even are first, even though she got them from a witch. For all she knows, there's potions and potion ingredients there. Shockingly, the story ends before we can even find out what was in those presents. At least this way we don't have to see the kids get upset at seeing Eye of Newt. As usual, Della makes no sense. There wasn't much to say about the story. I'm just glad all of the bad deeds were done against Della instead of someone I'd really feel sorry for, like I expected. Even if you'd think that Della would send one of her employees to check on Sabrina. Archie 329. Hilda says she zapped up a 6-foot sundae for Sabrina. That was nice of her. But there's no way she'd be able to finish all that. Of course Sabrina appreciates it. Hilda asks her if there's anything she'd like her to make disappear, and Sabrina says her stomach ache. Everything's Archie 111. Hilda says at a beauty contest that the judges should have picked Sabrina as the winner, which especially makes sense because Sabrina's crying, so she's saying this out of pity for her. So the story ends with all of the judges turned into giant frogs. Life with Archie 242. This comedy page has Sabrina telling more told that her folks are a normal family, except they like to celebrate Halloween every day. It's kind of a clever lie. She's still stirring in a cauldron, but people are more willing to believe her lie than believe she's a witch. Betty Me 139. We see Hilda put potion ingredients in a blender, turn it on, drink it, and then for no reason she starts shaking. What if she had been told not to do that by other witches? How long have blenders been around? Maybe this is just the effect of one specific potion. Archie at Riverdale High 97. A dog goes after Salem, who brainwashes them, wanting him to turn around and go back where he came from. Then a black and white cat tells Salem that there's a new dog terrorizing his neighborhood. I'm guessing it's the old dog. Salem heroically offers to hypnotize him. It's admirable that the cat is known for using his powers in the best interests of his neighborhood cats, to the point where they go to him for help. He looks in the bush, gets scared at seeing a hot dog, and runs away because he's too panicked to hypnotize them since he only had a second to register that he was there. And the cat says, "You and your hypnotism. Since him having it is why I got in the situation. He'd have the same problem if it was any other magical power he was known for." Archie 145. Hilda says she has some home movies of Sabrina showing her as a child. Hilda didn't let her go on some rides because she kept insisting on finding a ride that was suitable for a young witch, and she found a broom for her to sit on. It's kind of hard to believe that broom ride for 10 cents was a thing on Earth. I love that Sabrina is just as happy at seeing the video as she is. Jughead 334. Hilda gets asked if she gained weight, and she says no because with her magic, it's easy to resist temptation and lists off a lot of food. The only reason her magic would mean that is if she casts a spell so that she wouldn't want to eat any of the desserts. So of course she didn't gain. Sabrina asks her if she could resist a lizard cream pie. It'd be a dessert too, so why wouldn't the spell make her able to resist it too? And all of that's ignoring the fact that she could just zap her excess weight away if she ever noticed that she had too much. And Hilda uses magic at every opportunity. So why would she even bother going on a diet? Archie's Girls 330. Sabrina hears someone say she's overweight because she can't resist opening the fridge. Sabrina uses magic to try to fix that, and causes her to get scared by monsters out of her fridge. And Sabrina is completely confident that she did the right thing here. Or she could waste money on a new fridge, or go on an all-raw food diet. Archie's TV Lap Out, issue 95. Fairyland Excursion. Esmeralda tells Sabrina that she's bored with just reading about fairy tales, and wants to visit the characters. Sabrina agrees right away because she's just that bored, I guess. And says they can only visit Fairyland through a mirror she uses magic on. She must have been told about Fairyland by her aunt off-screen, since she already knows what it's called. They walk through the mirror, and we see Sabrina warn Goldilocks that the bears are at home. Thankfully there's a twist, because I was bored with a fairy tale plagiarism. She's not scared because nothing can tear the bears away from their TV sets. Except hearing her. I guess we're supposed to assume they're hard of hearing. But that's not what Sabrina would have imagined to be the case. She must have created a portal to an actual parallel universe called Fairyland, rather than go into a pocket universe she created based on a fairy tale. Goldilocks wants to sample the bears' TV dinners and sleep on their waterbeds. It seems less realistic that they'd all have waterbeds. Salem thinks the girl bear is watching. She is a home invader. But surprisingly, Salem doesn't go on to keep watching her, because he can't talk in this story. So he has to follow Sabrina when she walks away. At least he had morality. I guess he left her shoulder because he likes the exercise. Esmeralda the Evil Witch is suddenly out of character, wanting to do a good deed and help fill up someone's bare cupboard. Well, it's good to redeem a character, but it's confusing instead of having a new cousin. Old Mother Hubbard happily greets them, and her cupboard isn't bare, because the local supermarkets came up with cents-off coupons and double coupon day. That's good, of course. The dog just has to be portrayed as fattened up, because the supermarkets kept offering free samples on dog food, apparently. And Salem tries the dog food just because he's so bored and hates his taste. Somehow, even at this point, Esmeralda expects the Three Little Pigs story to be the same in modern times, although it is responsible to help them just in case, because otherwise they'll get threatened by the wolf. She wants them to build their homes before the wolf shows up. Again, she's doing a good deed. I'm glad she's tolerable as a character now, but what happened to her? She's told pigs don't build homes anymore. They all live in a nice big condominium, and the security guard chases away the wolf for them. It'd obviously be more interesting to see both of those things, instead of just being told about it. Sabrina sees the story of Cinderella, who returns to being in rags. But aside from the patches on her skirt, she still looks fantastic. Sabrina tells her that with her magic, she can still return to the ball. Sadly, she doesn't get to help her and speed up Cinderella's story. That's a shame, because I like seeing her do good deeds without it backfiring. Cinderella interestingly elaborates that she doesn't want to go back to the ball. The prince is a dumb male chauvinist. You can only tell because he calls her a chick. But that's really her only evidence as far as we're seeing. A lot of people said the word chick. But he's portrayed badly because he only sees her as a chick, not calling her by name. This is a dumb change because it has nothing to do with things being in modern times. They're one to be a ball, so the story derails itself into a feminist author trend, complete with Cinderella preferring to pursue a career as a plumber and telling the prince to get lost. He would have, if anything, been way less sexist in modern times. It just seems like the writer was too irritated there. Esmeralda goes home with Sabrina and wants to just stick to being read fairy tales from now on. This story was about Sabrina bringing Esmeralda into a parallel universe where fairy tales are real. But inconveniently for her, they've changed since modern times. So the bears don't do anything interesting because they're too busy watching TV to go after Goldilocks, making it more clear that she's just a thieving home invader. The pigs live in a safe big building, and the old lady uses coupons to get food just fine. So those are good for the characters, but leaves them with no interesting story around them. They just give Sabrina exposition about their lives. The story only sucks when suddenly Cinderella hates the prince for being a sexist out of nowhere, because the writer really wanted to rant about sexist that day. The rest of the stories were about fairy tales in modern times. Cinderella wouldn't even have a ball to sneak into, and while it's not impossible that the prince would be like this, he wouldn't be nearly as likely to be. And since that's the only line he has, she looks far more unsympathetic than him, telling him to get lost and calling him a creep as a thank you for returning her slipper. You'd think the whole story wouldn't have happened because Sabrina would have created a pocket universe where the fairy tales were as she imagined them to be. I guess the magic mirror did all the work for her and found a universe for her, because she said fairyland to it. But why didn't it realize she wanted a place set in medieval times? But it was an interesting twist in the various stories, so it wasn't bad. Laugh Comics 383. Sabrina warns Hilda that Ambrose is putting brew in his car, something that caused an explosion in the 70s comic. And Hilda says it's another experiment of his. Ambrose says that if it works, the country will no longer be dependent on oil. Why does he even bother to say this when he'd know he's not allowed to share brew with mortals? They'd be really confused that it has a magical effect for no scientific reason and hound him about why. I wonder why he hates OPEC oil. Sabrina and Hilda agree to go on a drive with him, even though Hilda thinks it'll risk their lives, and the car rattles and hovers, which would attract attention. Ambrose says he'd better give the car less gas to land. It's very good that he even can land back on the road just by driving slower. They stop the car at a toll booth. Hilda wisely suggests flying over it. It's amusing that the toll booth person sarcastically suggests the same thing. Ambrose flies over it, so he thinks he's getting too much overtime. Ambrose gets told he should land the car because they're coming to a city, and he lands on top of the city bus. They get stuck in heavy traffic and the car flies, but it gets exciting when he gets warned to watch out for that crane and avoids it and heads for the girders. Then he just misses a building, and when he's told to take them home, he's nice enough to do so. He says that someday he'll come up with a fuel-saving form of transportation. And Hilda says that they have one, and it's a broom. And we've even seen that 3 people can fit on one in an earlier page. Of course, his point was that it'd be for mortals too. This story's about Ambrose putting brew in his car that doesn't float up and flying around with it, freaking out mortals and his family because he almost crashes into a bunch of stuff. I'm relieved that he never did crash. Pep 395. Witchcraft tips for teens. We see some narration and I don't know who it's by. I just have to assume it's by Sabrina. Normally, when I see a story in Archie's Girls that has narration all over the place, I tend to get bored and skip the narration or even skip the entire story. But because this is about witchcraft, I'm interested. There's an amulet that protects the wearer from having to see movies that suck. At least I assume that's what grody means here, since it also says the word clunker. I loved how mundane the use of this magical amulet was. I have to assume that the way the amulet works is that if the wearer is about to watch a bad movie, the amulet magically forces them to choose a different good movie and forces the person she's dating to be okay with it, maybe. There's no way the amulets would outright change the movie they're seeing. because that really confused the mortals. Then the narration says that if the amulet fails to protect the wearer from seeing a bad movie, it'll at least guarantee that the movie popcorn's fresh. Why would it ever fail? Maybe because it doesn't brainwash the person going with the witch into agreeing to see another movie, because the amulet's wearers didn't want that out of it from moral concerns. Then there's an incantation for warding off unauthorized diary readers. Why is the word incantation ever used instead of spell? It's just longer for the same thing. Sabrina's holding a diary, and there's a text bubble coming from out the window. So I have to assume that Sabrina's holding the diary of one of her aunts, or Ambrose. And the text bubble shows up because part of the spell in the diary involves that voice playing when the wrong person holds the diary. Whoever peeks at the pages, which I have to assume doesn't include the owner of the diary, will have to wear their dealy bobbers for the rest of their lives. I don't know what those are, so I'm gonna assume they're embarrassing fashion items. This panel was boring because there's been tons of comedy pages about what happens when someone tries to read Sabrina's diary. Then there's a panel about a voodoo doll and pins meant for punishing boyfriend stealers. But why would a witch ever let someone steal their boyfriend? I've already seen voodoo dolls in the series. The narration says that the doll hexer guarantees that the woman will always have to wear last year's fashions. So what? Why would it be that minor? Then there's a calendar for warding off the Monday blues by having 2 Tuesdays in it. But the narration says that it only causes the Tuesday blues. Why doesn't it just have a spell to make people happy with Mondays like I thought? Surprisingly, that's the end of the story. It's one of those rare comedy pages that forgets to have the words "the end." Only half of those panels were really interesting, and it could have gone on for a few more pages. Everything's Archie 112, Pet Patter. Hilda asks if pets are allowed in the store, and she startles them with an alligator. This would have been better if the artist bothered to color them in instead of having them all be in silhouette, diminishing its impact. She never has alligators as pets, so she just did this as a prank. Life with Archie 243, Pajama Game. Esmeralda cries because Hilda made her cancel her pajama party and will never know why. I guess she did something to really bother her. So Sabrina levitates pajamas and makes them dance to make her feel better, doing something that she did at her slumber party. So it's just lazily reusing a joke. Betty Me 140. Ambrose says he prefers real golf to mini golf. Sabrina gets the idea that they have to shrink themselves to enjoy the course more, says so right in front of a mortal, and the story ends with her doing so, with no indication of whether it actually made the game more enjoyable.